Ananya Kapoor, a 19-year-old Indian student with dreams bigger than her circumstances, and Rajiv Malhotra, a wealthy 52-year-old businessman hiding a secret life, were drawn together by a sugar daddy arrangement that promised luxury but spiraled into obsession. What began as money and glamour quickly unraveled into control, betrayal, and a murder that shocked an entire city. Ananya Kapoor was only 19 when her life began to split into two very different worlds. To most people who knew her, she was a bright, determined student at a respected college in Delhi. She carried her notebooks everywhere, often spotted in the campus library with her head buried in textbooks. Her social media painted a picture of innocence and ambition. Selfies with friends in the cafeteria, late-night coffee cups during exam season, and motivational quotes about success. Teachers admired her for her sharp mind, and her family believed she was fully devoted to her studies. But beneath this carefully constructed image, Ananya was hiding a secret that none of them could have imagined. The truth was that Ananya's life in Delhi was far more difficult than it appeared. Her father's small business had suffered heavy losses, and her family struggled to pay her tuition fees and rent, while other students from wealthier backgrounds spent weekends at malls and cafes. Ananya quietly calculated every expense, trying to stretch her limited allowance. The constant pressure to excel while worrying about money left her exhausted. She felt torn between her dreams and the heavy financial burden pressing on her young shoulders. It was during this time that she stumbled upon a website that promised to connect young women with wealthy men. At first, she was hesitant, scrolling past glossy profiles that seemed unreal, but curiosity soon turned into temptation. Stories of expensive gifts, luxury vacations, and financial support pulled her in. She told herself it was only temporary, just until she could pay off her debts and secure her future. With trembling hands, she created a profile, choosing words carefully to make herself appear confident, sophisticated, and desirable. Within weeks, she met Rajiv Malhotra, a successful businessman more than 30 years older than her. He was charming, polished, and generous from the very first message. Their first meeting was at an upscale restaurant where Rajiv arrived in a sleek car and greeted her with the kind of attention she had never experienced before. He listened to her intently, showered her with compliments, and assured her that he would take care of her needs. By the end of the night, she returned home with an expensive handbag and an envelope of cash, enough to cover her tuition for the next semester. For Ananya, it felt like stepping into another world. She continued attending her classes during the day, pretending everything was normal, but at night she was whisked away into luxury hotels, fine dining, and gifts she had only seen in shop windows. It was a double life that thrilled her and terrified her at the same time. What began as a simple arrangement between Ananya and Rajiv soon shifted into something far more complicated. In the early months, their meetings were filled with gifts, expensive outings, and promises of a carefree life. But as time passed, Rajiv's affection started to feel less like generosity and more like control. He demanded constant updates about her whereabouts, often flooding her phone with calls and messages. At first, Ananya thought it was harmless, perhaps just a sign that he cared. Soon, however, the tone of his messages grew possessive. He wanted to know who she was talking to, where she was going, and why she sometimes took too long to reply. Ananya found herself trapped in an emotional cage she had never anticipated. What was meant to be an arrangement based on clear boundaries began to feel suffocating. She had entered the relationship believing she could keep her independence while accepting financial support, but Rajiv seemed determined to blur those lines. His jealousy grew particularly sharp whenever she mentioned her college friends. Even harmless photos with classmates on social media sparked endless questioning from him. He began warning her against other men, insisting she owed him loyalty because of everything he had given her. Behind his successful exterior, Rajiv carried an insecurity that fed into obsession. He was in his 50s, wealthy but restless, and saw Ananya as proof that he still had power over youth and beauty. When she showed hesitation about their future, His fear of losing her deepened. He began arriving unannounced at her hostel gates, sometimes waiting in his car until she finished classes. He even pressured her to stop spending time with certain friends, suggesting that they were a bad influence. Ananya realized too late that she had underestimated how entangled she had become. Her initial plan was to quietly step away after saving enough money, but Rajiv had no intention of letting her go. His words became sharper, laced with veiled threats about what might happen if she tried to leave. What she didn't know was that he had already crossed another line. Determined to keep her under his watch, Rajiv had secretly hired a private investigator to follow her. Every outing with friends, every late-night cafe visit, and every unfamiliar number on her phone was quietly recorded and reported back to him. The freedom she once sought by entering this arrangement was slipping further away with each passing week. What had started as an escape from financial hardship was slowly transforming into a dangerous web of control, one that left Ananya feeling trapped in ways she could not yet fully see. In the first week of June, Ananya told her friends she was heading to Jaipur for a quick study break, a harmless excuse to avoid questions. In reality, she had agreed to spend a weekend with Rajiv at a secluded farmhouse he owned on the outskirts of the city. The property was surrounded by high walls and acres of empty land, cut off from the noise of traffic and the bustle of daily life. For Rajiv, it was the perfect place to escape judgmental eyes. For Ananya, it was supposed to be one last meeting, a way to end things quietly before she moved on. When they first arrived, the atmosphere felt strangely calm. The farmhouse was lavish, with a large swimming pool glistening in the sun and expensive furniture filling every room. Rajiv tried to make the weekend feel like a celebration. He prepared her favorite wine, ordered food from an upscale restaurant, and played soft music by the poolside. For a few hours, it almost seemed like the tension between them had faded. Ananya allowed herself to relax, even laughing at his stories, but deep down she knew the peace would not last. As night approached, the mood began to shift. After dinner, Rajiv grew restless, pressing her about their future together. He spoke of leaving his wife, starting a new life, and demanded to know whether she would stay loyal to him if he made such a sacrifice. Ananya felt cornered. She had planned to gently step away from the arrangement, but his intensity made that impossible. She finally admitted that she wanted to move on, that their relationship had become too heavy for her. Her words shattered the illusion Rajiv had built in his mind. His face darkened, his voice rising as he accused her of using him. The argument grew louder, echoing through the empty farmhouse. Plates clattered as one was pushed off the table, glass shattering against the tiled floor. Neighbors who lived half a kilometer away later told police they heard faint shouting carried by the wind, followed by a sudden silence. Ananya retreated to the guest bedroom, shaken and frightened, while Rajiv stormed out of the room. Hours passed without another word. The once bright farmhouse had turned into a place of dread. She had come believing she could control the situation, but now she felt the walls closing in, sensing that something irreversible was about to happen. The following morning unfolded with an eerie stillness around the farmhouse. The sun rose over the quiet fields, casting long shadows across the empty pool and silent verandas. Rajiv was seen by a farm worker leaving the property just after dawn, driving his luxury car back toward Delhi. He looked calm, his clothes pressed, his demeanor composed, as though nothing unusual had happened. There was no sign of Ananya at his side. For the first time in days, her phone was switched off, and the friends who tried to reach her grew uneasy when their messages remained unread. By evening, rumors began to circulate among her classmates. She had not returned to the hostel, and her absence in lectures was unusual. Some thought she might have extended her trip, while others whispered that she was hiding something. Her closest friend grew anxious and called her family, but even they had no idea where she was. The secrecy of her double life was now working against her, leaving her loved ones with only confusion and unanswered questions. 2 days later, the farmhouse caretaker arrived to clean the property after Rajiv's visit. As he walked through the rooms, he noticed a strange smell in the guest bedroom. Pulling back a stack of sheets carelessly piled in the corner, he discovered the lifeless body of Ananya Kapoor. Her injuries told the story of a violent end, with blunt force trauma cited later as the cause of death. The discovery shocked the quiet rural community, and within hours the police were called to secure the scene. Detectives moved quickly, piecing together her final days. Toll booth cameras along the highway showed Rajiv's car traveling to and from the farmhouse during the exact week in she went missing. Witnesses confirmed that he had been there with her. Yet when brought in for questioning, Rajiv denied involvement. He told investigators that Ananya had left on her own and insisted he had no idea what happened afterward. His calmness unsettled the officers, making it difficult to read whether he was lying or simply hardened by years of concealing secrets. Despite his denial, the evidence pointed in his direction. Items belonging to Ananya were still inside the farmhouse, and her phone was recovered near the bed where she was found. What no one yet realized was that the story was far more complex than it appeared, and another figure, long hidden in the background, was about to come into focus. The investigation into Ananya's death took an unexpected turn when forensic experts began analyzing the evidence more closely. At first, suspicion focused solely on Rajiv, whose relationship with her was well hidden but now fully exposed. Detectives believed the violent argument might have pushed him over the edge, leading to a fatal outburst. Yet, as they dusted the farmhouse for fingerprints and examined the crime scene, another set of prints emerged on the glassware and bedroom furniture, prints that did not belong to either Ananya or Rajiv. When the results came back, the match stunned the police. They belonged to Rajiv's wife, Meera. Meera Malhotra was a woman accustomed to high society appearances and carefully polished reputations. She had lived for years as the dutiful wife of a wealthy businessman, attending charity events and posing for photographs alongside him. But beneath the surface, she had known about his infidelity for months. Private messages on his phone, unexplained absences, and hushed phone calls late at night had made her suspicions grow until they hardened into certainty. Instead of confronting him openly, she began following him, quietly tracking his movements until she confirmed the truth. On the weekend of Ananya's disappearance, Meera had secretly followed Rajiv to the farmhouse. Her anger boiled over as she waited in the shadows, knowing her husband was inside with the young woman who had stolen not only his attention, but also her dignity. What happened next, investigators pieced together from bloodstains and witness statements. Rajiv and Ananya had argued, but it was Meera who entered the guest room later that night. Fueled by rage and humiliation, she struck the fatal blow that ended Ananya's life. Rather than reporting what had happened, Rajiv made a choice that sealed his fate. Desperate to protect his reputation and fortune, he helped conceal the crime, arranging the body beneath the sheets and leaving the farmhouse at dawn as if nothing had happened. He believed his wealth and influence might shield him from suspicion, but the forensic trail told a different story. When both Rajiv and Meera were arrested, the scandal dominated headlines. The glamorous couple, once admired in elite circles, now stood accused of a crime that destroyed 3 lives: Ananya's lost future, Meera's freedom, and Rajiv's carefully built empire. What began as a secret sugar daddy arrangement had spiraled into obsession, betrayal, and murder, leaving behind a grim warning about the dangers of hidden lives and choices made in silence.